Welcome to the Mindful Momentum podcast. I'm grateful you're here, and I'm so excited to have Kevin Hendrickson here with us today to have a conversation on something that he's passionate about, that we're passionate about. And before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about Kevin. He is a member of Local 533 Union, and he has been that for 32 years, bringing a wealth of experience and dedication to his role as business manager for apparently the last 3.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. Nominations are tonight. See if I get another 3.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I have no doubt you'll be nominated in. But he's a respected figure in his professional community, but also a family man, married with 4 children and 2 granddaughters, which I didn't know.
Yep.
Isn't being a grandpa like the best?
Whenever you get to see them.
Oh,
That's
you
the
don't get
hard
to see
part.
him often. Do
No,
they not live
not
close?
very. One lives down Springfield. One lives close, but son-in-law and daughter share time with her her mom. So yeah.
Hard to find time.
Yep.
Oh, it's pretty much the best. So, a Christian by faith, he finds solace and joy in the outdoors. He's an avid hunter and enjoys a wide range of outdoor activities. So, what's your favorite outdoor activity?
Hunting.
Hunting. What do you hunt?
Deer or turkey mostly.
Okay.
But anymore, I just hunt for time.
Yeah.
It's like
it's so true.
I hunt for time to be able to do the things that I enjoy doing. But
it's true. Yeah.
My dad always said, time or money, you'll never have both of them.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
I love just being reminded that we have to be intentional about filling up with those things that bring us joy.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, I'm just, as I said, really grateful that you're here, and I love having conversations with people who, are, as I said, passionate about mental health, and you coming from the construction industry. I know our story we've talked about numerous times to people about how it was not a coincidence that our paths crossed.
Oh, no, not by
but
any means.
I would love for you to share kind of what you've encountered in the construction industry that's really kind of nudged you or has been the catalyst to pursue addressing mental health within Local 533.
So, as you know, our members, when they come in young through the apprenticeship program and they get, quote unquote, mentored by journeymen, one of the first things we get taught is we take care of each other. We are a brotherhood. A lot of people throw the term brother or brotherhood around rather loosely at times, but you've seen it.
I've seen it.
We mean it, and that's how we're brought up through the trade, and so that gets instilled in us very early. And throughout my career, I've known several of our members who have fallen victim to suicide. Yeah. I'm not necessarily going to say that it was work related. Most of them, you wouldn't have even known that anything was troubling them because we just never talked about it.
Right.
In my career, I've witnessed a person fall to their death. I've witnessed numerous life-altering accidents that people have had to deal with, and being an instructor for 20-ish years, and with our apprentices going to school 2 nights a week and working a full-time job, a lot of them are young family people. And by young family people, not only are they young, but their family's young. They have little ones at home, and that brings its own unique burden to the young membership. So what I guess what led me to this concern was just the fact that one of our own was brought to me for some help because we help each other, and we didn't know what to do. So I think your question was what experience did I have that made me passionate about it? It's just the upbringing through the trade that we do take care of each other, and it is a family. I have 2 families. I have my blood family, and I have my pipe fitter family. You know, a good friend of ours up at Omaha, a business manager up there, his mom passed away not that long ago, and Luke and I drove up to Omaha, attended his mom's visitation, got in a truck and drove back. And his friend, he goes, "You guys spent like 8 hours on the road to be there for maybe 10 minutes. Like, yeah, but we take care of each other. Yeah. We knew he was in a time of hurting, and we support each other, you know.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that's been so inspiring of working with Local 533 is really kind of being immersed into your culture. And as I've said before, it's been coming from the outside. It is really beautiful to see how you care deeply for each other. And really want what's best for, your fellow, union member. And interesting when you said about some of the contributing factors, and I think that was also one thing that we learned is there's a lot to your job, not just the hard work that it entails, but the fear, what you mentioned of watching someone fall to. I mean, that's traumatic.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's could create post-traumatic stress disorder and just that need to kind of process through, and then the physical toll it takes, on your body, leading people then to seek, painkillers or other means to
and
self-soothe.
Work is so prevalent right now, and so many of the jobs are working ridiculous amounts of hours, and that just has its own unique burden on a person. When they're trying to go to work to provide the best they can for their family, but it's taken away from their family, and they're trying to find that balance, and that can weigh heavy on a person's emotions. You keep telling yourself, I'm doing the best thing I can for my family, but at the same time,
what are you sacrificing?
But at the same time, you're taking away from your family. So it's
not easy.
It's taken me many, many years to express it, but and I tell everybody, you're not going to find a successful pipe fitter that doesn't have a good support group at home. Growing up, my wife never spoke ill about me not being able to attend certain events with the kids. She never spoke ill when they were waiting for me to get home to go do something, and she'd have to tell the kids, well, guys, we got to go without Dad. He's got to work late. It'll be fine. We can go without him. It was never, well, your dad's not going to make it again. It was always, Dad's got to work. This is why we get to go do what we're getting ready to go do. It's because Dad's at work. So, and we try to stress that with the younger generation. Whenever we have an opportunity to address the support group that's at home, we try to say, we appreciate what you do. Because we know when that apprentice is gone 2 nights a week, if there's little ones at home, that's an extra burden on somebody else. Because sometimes that person at home just wants somebody to come home and give them a break from little ones running around.
Sure. Yeah, parenting's hard.
Yeah.
I love that, and I love that you highlighted that, because I think sometimes we forget. It reminds me kind of our military families.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just the person who's doing the job, but it's that whole family unit that's affected by it for the good of the family. But still, it is could be taxing and could create extra stress for other people.
Our oldest daughter, she's married to one of our members. He was a member prior to them getting married, and he's working a lot of hours. And she made the comment to my wife, and she goes, I'm so glad that I grew up watching Dad do what he does. She goes, I don't think anybody that didn't grow up like that would understand why he has to do what he's doing.
Yeah.
She goes, and it's still hard.
Sure.
She goes, but at least
she knows that's just how it works.
Yeah,
just how it rolls.
Yeah. And she knows the opposite of that is one day work may dry up, and now a guy's sitting at home all the time, spending all of his time with his family, but now he's stressing out, how am I going to provide for my family?
Yeah.
So you go from providing and not having time with them, I'm back to what my dad said: time and money.
Yeah.
You're going to have one, but you're not going to have the other.
Yeah.
So,
I know. It's just interesting how, when I talk with people about our work in the construction industry and the statistics, which, are staggering for suicide, for mental health issues. And even, 5 or 6 years ago, when I kind of stumbled upon those statistics, it was like, interesting. But once you start having a conversation about all the things, and then not to mention some of the other things, tell us a little bit more about what the culture has been in the construction industry in terms of coming from the 90s and onward, and just how things have changed in terms of that persona that oftentimes people have to, or have felt in the past, they have to hold on to, that's not helping them reach out for help and, share when they're kind of struggling. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So, I got in 1991, and when I got in the trade, you didn't talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
And if someone did try talking to you, you usually didn't listen. It was like, we got to get this well done. Let's not talk about your teenage child that's dealing you fits, or let's not talk about whatever. I'm like, hey, that's your problem.
Yeah.
But that is, and I don't know if it's so much that the construction industry has changed, or just we as a whole have changed. And as I said, I could probably sit here and list off 12 of our members easily that I know of that have passed away due to some kind of mental related illness, whether it was alcohol related, whether it was suicide, whether it was drug related. But that's where, when we sat down and talked to you and Nancy, and again, not to take away from the efforts that are being placed on suicide, but we said we want to reach our members before they get there.
Right.
Let's not wait until it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Let's fix it when it's just a smaller, easier thing to fix, hopefully.
Yeah.
But and it doesn't help. We're in a very competitive market. And when I say we, I mean our union contractors. So that puts a lot of pressure on our members. We don't find ourselves having that time during the day to pull away from what we're doing and say, hey, I noticed something's bothering you. We need to talk about it. And that's where I'm glad to see our contractor group is recognizing that, and they're on board. If you've spoke with them, and they're looking at, maybe getting someone a layoff check isn't the go-to response. Maybe the go-to response is, hey, come in my job trailer, come in the break room, or come outside, wherever. I notice you're not yourself.
Yeah.
What can we do? And that's where we hope to get to, is, and that's the thing that started this whole, I don't want to say project, but initiative with you and Nancy was just that. And luckily somebody noticed that, and unfortunately that situation, it was obvious there was an issue, but they're like, we can't just send this guy home. We got to get him some help. And I've been very amazed at how that whole thing has just snowballed into what it is today.
Yeah. Well, and talk a little bit about how, and I love this kind of this story about you. Luke Moylan is what's his role at?
So he's a business agent.
Business agent. Okay.
But he is also has been for 9 or 12 years. I've lost track. It's either 9 or 12 years. Been a health and welfare trustee.
Gotcha.
And the last 3 years, he has been the chairman of our trust fund. So there's 6 trustees, 3 labor and 3 management, and Luke is the chairman for the last 3 years.
Okay.
So you want me to share the story?
About the physical, how you and him talked about this gentleman who came, who was struggling, and Luke said, well, if he had a broken leg.
Yeah, so we got a phone call, and I got to remember that the people that are going to be listening to this haven't heard the story. I'm trying to remind myself, Robin's heard this story 1,000 times. Luke and I are in the office, and Luke gets a phone call from a member, and he comes into my office, and he says, we got a problem. It's okay. What do you mean? Well, so-and-so's out on the job. He's having a breakdown. They got to get him off the job. They need to get him some help. They don't know what to do. I said, well, you're right. We need to get him off the job. We don't want him to be there and get hurt. We don't want him to be there and anyone else, the customer or anyone else, cast judgment on him that we don't need right now. So let's get him off the job.
And in terms of safety.
Yeah.
Right?
Get him off the job, get him in here. So Luke calls back the concerned member, says, bring him in here, bring him in Kevin's office, we'll sit down with him. So Luke comes in and says, well, they're on their way. And I looked at Luke and I said, now what do we do? He says, I don't know. I said, well, do you still know the lady over at the provider we had at the time for our EAP, Employee Assistance Program? He said, well, I have a contact. I said, call them. Maybe they can give us a quick rundown on do's and don'ts. I said, let me call another resource, see if they know somebody that can help us. Meantime, this member's on their way to my office. And Luke and I, we get to talking, and I don't remember which one said what, but it's like, we fix broken pipes. We don't fix broken emotions. We don't fix broken brains. We fix broken systems, broken pipes, broken equipment. And Luke goes, yeah. He says, if this was a broken leg or a broken arm or something, he says, we'd know exactly what to do. He goes, and this is no different. He says, this person's broken. It's just not a physical break. It's an emotional break. And did you want me to take that into
I love that. I mean, I just feel like that really, I mean, that's really where we are in helping us as a culture shift how we see mental health.
Yeah.
Because I think in years past, it's been something private. It's been something like, oh, we don't talk about, we'll be called crazy, or, somebody's going to send me away, whatever myths and misconceptions. And I think it just illustrates that it is no different. And the fact that you and Luke were able to really verbalize that and recognize that, and then step outside your comfort zone a little bit to have him come in, and not knowing exactly what you were going to do, but knowing that you needed to do something. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's, of course, where I love to talk to people about how do we just take that one baby step to start the conversation. And maybe you had done some things prior to that, but I feel like in our conversation, that was kind of that.
That was the tipping point. It was. And when the member came in, Luke and I were both very frustrated. The farther we went with this member, trying to get him help, the member hadn't been working much, had lost his insurance. Sorry. I told my wife I was in a podcast, but she still tried calling me. But we got very frustrated with the system. And the day that member left my office, Luke and I both had a very, very, what's the right way to say it? We felt very helpless and frustrated. More so frustrated than anything, because every direction that we were given was a dead end. And to the member's credit, you know, I had to give the member a little bit of tough love. I said, we're going to help you. We're going to get through this. We're going to get you some help. We're going to get you in a good place. I says, but the minute you quit doing your part, I'm done. I'm not going to spend any more time or effort on you if you're not going to follow through. And to this member's credit, we finally ended up getting him help through the VA, but that was a challenging process in itself. And this member calls me up and he goes, Kevin, I don't want to disappoint you. He says, you told me that you were going to give up on me if I don't follow through on my part. He says, I don't know how to follow through. He says, I'm at a point where I don't know what to do. He says, but I don't want you to give up on me. I'm like, hey,
yeah,
we won't. And, you know, today, looking back, not only is this member in a much better place, he's maintained steady employment for a long time, and now he's offering that same assistance to other people on the job. There's a young person on the job that was struggling, had a hard time showing up to work, had a hard time showing up on time. This member says, what's your address? Give me your address and be outside at what time, because I am picking you up and I am making sure you get to work every day, and I'm making sure you get here on time. And I thought, you know, that's what we hope for.
Absolutely.
You know, is guys just start recognizing instead of
paying it forward for the help that they've been given. And a couple of things that you highlight that I think are worthy to note is, one is the power of just hope for people, of just knowing that, like, okay, there's one person who is going to try and help me. And I love this kind of toggling between, like, okay, but you got to do your part.
Yeah.
And empowering him to really not just enable him, like, I'm going to take care of everything for you, but really empowering him with those. But also just the fact that there were obstacles. And I think that happens a lot. And when you're struggling and you hit an obstacle, it's like it can be so overwhelming that they give up. And I think that's what's so beautiful, of course, about the peer support program, which we'll get into in a moment, but of having kind of those people around us that can help us navigate that. Because when we are in kind of have gotten to that crisis mode, then any little thing makes it that much harder to get help, to get to a better place. So
we, along those lines, we had a member with an issue. He kept refusing to give in and say he had an issue. Finally got him talked in to going to get help. And he voluntarily went to a facility, inpatient facility, to get some help. There was a incident, no fault of his, that resulted in him not getting to complete the program. And he calls me up. He says, Kevin, I don't know what to do. I said, what do you mean? He says, they didn't let me finish the program. I said, that's fine. Let's find you something else. I said, but it's going to take some time for you to make sure you meet these appointments if we can get something set up. And we were able to get him back to work. And we were able to find him an evening outpatient option so that he could continue getting the help that he needed. And I mean, that right there was an obstacle that could have very easily led to him saying, you know what?
Throw in the towel, I'm done.
These professionals are supposed to be here to give me help and get me through this. But they're kicking me out of their program. Gosh. So now what do I do?
Well, and there's these wait times and lack of therapists and counselors, and sometimes it's just, to kind of think outside the box and take the time to figure all that out can be daunting.
Just about a month ago, had to have the tough love talk with a member. He says, I don't know what to do. I said, I do. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'll point you in the right direction, and I'm going to give you my opinion on what needs to be done. But you're going to have to do it. I said, I'm going to ask you one favor. are you willing to do me one favor and give me your word on one favor? Kevin, I'll do whatever I got to do. I said, you need to go to an inpatient facility. And he said, I don't know where you're at. I said, I do. I have a phone number. I said, I can call up. I can see if they have a bed. And if they have a bed, here's my favor. I want you to go tonight. Wow. And he says, well, you think we can wait until about a week or so? I said, no, we're not going to wait a week. We're not going to wait a week. I said, you need help now. I said, and if they have a bed, they may not have a bed in a week. Yeah. And we do run into that. We run into situations where members are willing to go, and I'm speaking specifically to the inpatient stuff here, but we do run into that hurdle where they don't have beds available when they need it. And one member that did this on his own, unbeknownst to us, what was going on until accidentally found out later on. He went through that. He tried calling a place, didn't have room, tried calling another place, but he kept calling until he found a place. Yeah. And when I found
your
out
average person may not do that.
And when I found out where he was, I'm like, how did you end up there? He goes, dude, I just kept calling until I found some place that would take me. He goes, I needed help, and I needed help right then. Wow. I'm like, but he was willing to talk to us about it. Yeah. And he's willing to talk to other members about it, you know. And I've asked him, I said, do you mind if I share your story and your contact with people with similar struggles? He goes, absolutely not. You know, and that just goes back to that brotherhood thing. He says, I'd be more than happy to tell people that it's so much better when you get done with it. Yeah. So
getting help. Well, and that alludes to a couple of things. One is, and we'll dive into this, but just to circle back to what you originally said, which was, how do we equip our members with those skills to hopefully mitigate getting to that place of crisis? Right. And I think that, I think we all want to be empowered to help ourselves if we can. And there are things we know, those skills that we can learn to be resilient, those things that we can kind of have in our toolbox to help us navigate all the things that we've already talked about. And and then the other thing is really of just sharing your story. And we talk a lot about that, of helping to break down that stigma by people just being vulnerable enough to say, like, yeah, I've struggled, or my family struggled. And certainly Nancy and I, when we did our listening session with your groups at 533, it was very evident the minute one person kind of, again, got a little uncomfortable and shared, oh my gosh, floodgates opened. Yep. And that's the beauty of really sharing your story, because we all struggle. Yep. All of our families. We have lots of stuff, all of us. And it doesn't matter what we look like on the outside. It doesn't matter how put together we are. We all have those struggles. And when we can kind of let go of all those and recognize that we're all just trying to do the best we can, getting through life. And I think it binds us even more. It supports us and connects us. And then it helps us, of course, get to a better place. So I would love to know and love for you to share with our listeners kind of what you all have been doing since that moment of kind of realizing that you needed to do more, you wanted to do more for your members. And so take us on that journey.
Do you want the whole story starting in Denver?
I mean, maybe abbreviated, sure, okay, because I think it's fascinating.
So, and back to my Christian faith, that, you know, God is in charge of everything.
Absolutely.
And I 100% believe that's how this story happened. So, as I said, member left. Luke and I felt helpless, very frustrated. Fast forward to the International Foundation conference in Denver. I'm looking through the breakout sessions, and I see one on mental health. And I tell Luke, I said, I'm going to go sit in on this one. And one of the presenters' names was the same last name as one of our members. And I see that the presenters from Leawood, Kansas. I'm like, man, I got to talk to this lady afterwards. So it was Nancy Spangler.
Right.
And I go up and I have a brief conversation with her because I need to get to the next session and she's needing to go about her business. But I gave her my business card and I said, I would like to maybe have lunch or something and further this conversation when we both get back in town. Never heard from her. Fast forward, get an invitation to some breakfast down at Union Station on mental health awareness. And I asked Luke, I'm like, do you know anything about this? Why we got this invitation? He goes, don't know anything about it. I said, well, you want to go with me? And my involvement with Luke was due to his involvement in the health and welfare. And with that being where our EAP and our benefits for assistance through the health and welfare program. So he went with me. We go to this breakfast. We're there early, still confused as to why we even got this invitation. Don't know where the invitation came from. And in walks a tall blonde-haired lady and introduces herself to us and sits down at our table, and we just have a conversation and really don't know who anybody is at this point. And here comes the panel up on the stage, and lo and behold, one of them's Nancy Spangler. And I nudged Luke and I said, hey, that's that lady I told you I met in Colorado. And that's when the blonde lady next to us says, do you guys know Nancy? That's my partner. And we're like, no, we really don't. And that's where we got started, and we started meeting with you and Nancy, and you guys started off by just giving the what would you call it, the mindful training, mental awareness / mindfulness training to the business office and our training center staff. And that's when we decided we wanted to go to the next step, and you and Nancy came in and did the group discussions to kind of see where we were starting. And you both decided some kind of a peer support program would probably be best suited for us. And we did a lot of back and forth on that, you two came to us with a lot of ideas that we said, no, that's not what we want. And even the peer support, we talked to a lot of different organizations that had their model, and we're like, no, that's not what we want. We like this part, we like that part, but as a whole, we don't like it. And so that's when we finally got to our plan for a peer support program. And we thought the best way to start it would be to involve our instructors at the training center. One, their exposure to the apprentices. Two, they're all trained and experienced in developing curriculums. And we thought, this is kind of like a curriculum. They're good at receiving constructive criticism. They're good at brainstorming and figuring out how to get to a common goal. So that's where we started. And then we thought, it's going to be a lot easier to instill this program in the younger generation and let them come through the trade with it, and rather than try to work with the older generation and work our way down. So that's why the second round of training we did was focused on our apprentices. And we haven't done the third round yet, but we're working on the third round.
I think we're scheduled in August.
Yep, to be open to the membership as a whole, and anybody that hasn't had the training yet. And one of the challenges that we have is like, okay, how are we going to make the volunteers for the group, how are we going to make them accessible? And you and Nancy recommended maybe some kind of a profile. So if someone is dealing with teenage children, if they look at the profile, they can say, hey, this member has 3 teenage kids. They probably relate to a lot of the struggles I'm having, blah, 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 whatever. And we wanted the volunteers to have some kind of a profile, but we didn't want their phone numbers and everything to just be freely thrown out there. So we're like, okay, how do we control this? And at the risk of patting myself on the back, one day I'm like, our contractors that have service technicians, they have a call center service that they tell who needs to be contacted. I'm like, why don't we look into that? So we got with a call service, and we've hired them. And luckily, the call service made us aware of the fact that if we hire them, they own that phone number. They said, so go to your phone provider and and purchase a custom number. And if you ever decide to go to a different call service, you can take that number with you. So where we're at today, we have a dedicated phone number, and a member can call that phone number, and you and Nancy helped us develop a script that we gave to the call center. And if it's an issue of immediate danger, the call center knows to forward them to services outside of our group. And if I call up and I say, hey, I want to talk to Robin, they can look and see if Robin's available, because all of our volunteers have the ability to make themselves available or unavailable. So if they're spending time with their family on vacation, they can say I'm unavailable. If they're just in an emotional spot where they need to work on themselves, they can't really support someone else, they can make themselves unavailable. But if I call and I say, I'd like to talk to Robin, and if they see that Robin's not available, they now have two options. Would you like for us to send Robin a message to contact you at her earliest convenience, or would you like to speak to the next person available? And if I say, no, it can wait, I really want to talk to Robin, give her a message. So then Robin's going to get a message from the call service, and at some point Robin's going to call me back. Or if I say, no, I really want to talk to somebody today, they'll say, okay, and they go to the list and they'll contact me with the next available person. So it's been a road.
It has been a road, hasn't it?
I mean, you're talking about obstacles. It's like every time we got somewhere, it's like, okay, now what do we do? Yeah. But no, it's been great. It really has, and I think just us talking about what we're doing is making it easier for the members to talk more about it.
Absolutely. Just opening the door. Yeah. And I so Nancy and I have told you many times how much we appreciate this collaboration and being able to customize this program to really meet the needs of your members, because that's what's most meaningful. Yeah. And I applaud just you and Luke and your vision of this kind of this 3-year process, because I think that also illustrates that this is not a quick fix.
No, it's not.
This is going to take years and years, right. But it's this vision of, starting somewhere and really just continuing to let it grow, and eventually, hopefully 10 years from now, this will be something that's just so common of a conversation. And back to the fact that we take care of ourselves, and that's what's instilled in us. It was a certain financial investment on the locals' part, and a lot of times when we'll bring requests such as this to the body, there tends to be a lot of discussion and debate back and forth as to, do we really need this, or why are we spending this much money on this, or why don't we spend this money on that, or whatever. We have not experienced one iota of opposition when it comes to the time and the financial investment that has been put into this program. So that right there, the members understand there's a need. Yeah. Well, it's a great testament.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that most people, when we start this conversation, I think we all realize that I think all of us are naturally hungry for help.
Yeah.
None of us want to be in a place where we feel helpless or hopeless. And I think if there's any little thread or a lifeline where we can help ourselves or help our fellow brother or sister, we're gonna naturally want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, it's been really fun. The other thing is, which I'm excited about, is we're getting ready to start the Train the Trainer program with the lead, Curtis Oldham. Yep. And so that really empowers you all to keep that ripple going, moving forward, to continue to customize it even more, but to empower you to not continue to need Nancy and I, although we'll always be here to support you, and just, want to hear how things are going and if there's ever anything we can do. But I love that too, because again, that's going to make it more sustainable, more meaningful.
Well, once we reached the point where we had a 3-year plan, we as you said, we settled on 3 phases, and we identified what each phase was going to look like. As we were in phase 1, that's when we told you and Nancy, it's like, we don't want this to be Kevin and Luke's program.
Yeah.
We want the volunteers to take ownership of it. We want them to make it their program.
Yeah.
We want, Kevin and Luke kind of nudge the ball
rolling,
to get it rolling, but we don't want it to be seen as our program. And not that we're not both passionate about it, but by handing the reins over to someone else, I think that also gives a message to the membership that, hey, if these members are comfortable taking charge of this, then why can't I help out?
Right.
Why can't I volunteer if...
Well, and that really highlights 2 things. One is good leadership, right? We never want those initiatives and programs to be our own, because then if, as I leave or transition or retire, like, it all falls apart. And I see this over and over again in organizations. And 2, I think it really helps elevate other leaders within the membership.
Yep.
Like, I can be your, just your average journeyman. I can still be a leader at my work site and be a go-to if somebody's struggling.
Yep.
And so we empower each other to be, leaders, so that we can all, because we affect each other.
And it brings a whole different level of ideas into the mix too.
Absolutely.
Curtis has had a lot of similar training from our international, and he's bringing what he's learning there into the program, and that's all stuff that Luke and I wouldn't have had it not been for his experience in that part of his other responsibilities. So
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, really opens a door to just make it better.
Yeah. Well, it has been a journey. It's been so fun. A lot of work and a lot of just thinking and exploring different possibilities and how do we do this, but it's been our joy for sure. So as we kind of wrap up things, I'd love to know, and I'd love for you to tell our viewers, people out there, maybe they're in construction, maybe they're union, maybe whatever industry they're in, if they're in a place where they can start something, where do they start? Do you have any? What would you recommend?
I would call Rob.
Well, thanks. Besides that, yes, anybody can call me. Yes, for sure. But
just look for training. If you're a union organization, go to your international. See if your international already has something that you can implement. If you're not union affiliated, if you belong to some kind of an employer group, we all know different types of industries have different groups that they belong to, and if they don't have something, ask them why not. Why don't we have something to help train people within our group on how to handle this? Just ask the question.
And even knowing your resources. I feel like going back to that original catalyst of like, I don't know what to do or what not to do, even equipping your leadership, office staff to know, like, okay, what are the protocols? Because we know this isn't if, it's probably when something unfortunate is going to happen, and let's be proactive in being able to handle that the best that we can.
I guess the number one thing, just don't stop. Yeah. If you go somewhere and you don't get the answer you're looking for, okay, go to the next one. Yeah. And just keep going. It goes back to what we said about talking to other groups that had peer support programs, and we're like, that works for you, but that shoe isn't going to fit us. So we kept going. Yeah. We didn't stop. Yeah. The fact that their model didn't fit our needs, that wasn't a reason to stop. Okay, let's keep going. And eventually we're like, okay, we can't find something that fits, so let's just make our own.
Yeah.
And even now we're not stopping.
Yeah.
I mean, we still don't stop. You still keep, okay, what can we do next? What can we do next? And you've met Chris McGee, our training coordinator, and Chris and I taught together for many, many years at our training school and our training center. And one thing that Chris and I always told each other is, if you ever hear me say that my classes are exactly where I want them to be and there's nothing that I would change, remind me it's time for me to stop teaching. And it's the same way with this peer support program.
Yeah.
I really hope that Curtis and Pat never get to the point where they walk into my office and say, Kevin, we made it. What do you mean we made it? We made it to exactly where we want to be. And I don't think either one of them will.
No.
And that's why they're going to make good leads for that, is because they're constantly looking for what is the next thing we can do.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done that. Okay, what's next?
Right. How do we keep complimenting and
never stop,
expanding?
Never be happy with where you're at.
Yeah, love that. Well, it's an aim.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so it's you're always going to be continuing to build that awareness, that support for your members and their mental health and their health in general, but mental included.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love that. Well, it's been it's always great to visit with you.
Yeah.
I just am always inspired to be reminded of the journey that we've been on together, and it really has been so fun to work with your people. I mean, talk about hearts, big-hearted people. I mean, again, we kind of, our culture puts on this kind of tough exterior, but boy, underneath that tough exterior, there's some really big hearts and really caring individuals, and we know that. But I guess when you kind of do a broad sweep, that's kind of what you think of. Mm-hmm. And it's just been really enjoyable to work with you all and to see you guys and be a part of this. We always call you all the trailblazers, because you've been out in the front, kind of leading the way, kind of opening and those doors and having those conversations, and I know inspiring other organizations to start thinking, okay, what can we do? Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that in the conversations that we're having. And we love that, because we're here to support people in whatever capacity, whatever industry. But it's been very rewarding.
I like to use a line. Have you ever seen the movie We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson?
No.
Watch We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson.
We Were Soldiers.
There's a line in there where a younger officer, I can't remember the actor's name, but a younger officer asked Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was a senior officer. This was during the Vietnam War. And the young officer asked Mel Gibson, which Mel Gibson had a ton of kids in this movie. Mm-hmm. And he addressed him by his title. I don't remember what his name and title was, but he asked me, he says, How are you a good soldier and a good family man? Mm-hmm. And his answer was, he goes, you can't be good at one without being good at the other. And I thought about that, and I watched that movie before we had a turnout dinner where our apprentices completed something, and I told that group of apprentices, I said, we're a lot like what Mel Gibson says in that movie. How do you be a good person and be a good pipe fitter? You can't be one without the other. Yeah. A good pipe fitter is going to be a good person. Yeah. And a good person is going to be a good pipe fitter. Mm-hmm. And that's why I hope, and I'm confident that 99% of our membership feels the same way. Yeah. So.
Well, I think the support that you've gotten from the board and the people you've already talked to, really illustrate that. And we haven't even talked about my personal connection with this program, which briefly, for those listening, is that my stepbrother was
one of our members.
One of your members.
And we accidentally discovered that. We didn't know that going into this relationship, did we?
No. I knew when I first met you because, Randy was a pipe fitter. Right. And I didn't know it was with Local 533. Right. I didn't even know that was,
a thing.
A thing, exactly. And unfortunately, in the early 90s when drug addiction was prevalent, he talks of the parking lot was kind of a tailgate at lunch on every job site, and it was the norm.
Yep.
And for many, they could manage that. For him, unfortunately, was not the case, and became addicted. Went on to, unfortunately, take 3 lives off of this earth over the course of the next 10, 15 years, and has spent most of his adult life in prison. It's been interesting because I visit him fairly regularly. He's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I've been telling him about this program. And after I spoke at the Meet conference, I stopped to visit him. And I was sharing with him, and I told him, I said, I shared some of your story at this conference. And he got teary-eyed. And I just said, I hate that I have this story to tell,
mm-hmm.
but I am, I'm grateful that something is happening different than it, and I asked him what would happen, you think, if there would have been somebody on the job site that would have given you some tough love and said, you can't keep doing this, like you need help. And he said, I would hope that my outcome would have been different. And that's our hope, is that we save someone from a road of tragedy and heartbreak for not just him, but the families he's affected and our family. And just, he's not alone in all of that. So I do agree with you that there is some divine hand in all of this. And it feels good to be able to kind of pour into this industry, knowing that he was a part of that, and how can we kind of redeem some of the things that he's experienced and maybe save some other people along the way. And, we do the best we can. We keep on keeping on. And
if we save one, it was an absolute great investment.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you, Kevin. I just really appreciate
My
you being
pleasure.
here. I always love visiting with you, and just
it's always a good time.
Continue to enjoy our time collaborating. And we are here to inspire and empower your journey. So let's all continue to grow so that we can flourish. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, or visit me at our website, mindful-momentum.com, or reach out to me at Robin at mindful-momentum.com. But until next time.